Hello and welcome to this COMP3218 game design and development from the University of Southampton. Today we're going to be looking at some more of our students' courseworks. My name is Tom Blount, I'm one of the lecturers on the course, and I'm joined today by...
My name is Charles Hutchins, I'm one of the demonstrators on the course.
Fab. And Charles, can you tell us a little bit about what we asked our students to do for this coursework?
Sure, so we wanted them to build a prototype game which includes a tutorial level, and we wanted to see a strong core dynamic element to their game.
Brilliant. Alright, let's have a look at the first game. And our first game is Snow Run. So here we are, we've got a lovely little title screen, some lovely little background music. Hold on to your hats, so let's jump in and press play. Ooh, we've got a level select screen for this one. Set records and unlock hats. Ah, they know me so well. Brilliant. So let's start with the top left, Icicle Cave. Maybe would be nice if they had like a sort of a difficulty rating for each of them. I'm assuming it's going left to right, top to bottom, but you never know.
Mm-hmm. Icicle
Cave. So WSD, pick up snow to get bigger, use the mouse to look around. Okay, so the clock has already started. Okay, so that's snow, and that's what getting bigger does. I feel like, are we a bit slower when we've got more? It feels like we're getting slower as we get bigger.
Mm.
And I'm guessing when we run out of snow, we die or we lose. So, almost there. Nice little signpost.
Yeah.
Nice little terrain they've got generated here. Like, kind of clips into the camera at places, but otherwise, ooh, what have we got here? Oh, is this our igloo? Is this where we're trying to get to? Oh, I missed it. That wasn't on purpose. Let's try again. There we go. 25 seconds to unlock a top hat. I immediately have the urge to go back and try and unlock the top hat, but let's continue for now, and then I'll come back for those later. Left click to throw. Okay. Okay, so we got targets. We can throw snowballs. That unlocks the course, but I guess it costs us some snow. Ooh, so I'm going to need that snow. What's the range on our throw like? Can I get it from here? Yeah.
Okay.
I wonder how accurate do I have to hit the target or just the wall? Do you reckon?
I don't know.
I'm gonna skip this snow. I'm gonna risk it. I'm gonna see if I can get through this little gap. That may have been a bad idea.
Oh, you start getting a flashing red, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, nice little bit of information design. 25 seconds there for the cowboy hat. Alright, let's keep going. So we've got a new mechanics. We can jump. I've also just noticed the... Ooh, okay. So we've learned something else there. Water, bad. Okay, that first jump feels maybe a little bit unforgiving.
Oh,
no. Alright, so the jumping... the controls are a little bit odd. I feel like the height of our jump is maybe a little bit inconsistent, but I don't know if that's just me bouncing off some of the different polygons that we've got here. Not
it's
sure.
a nice environment though. It's very very thematically relevant and everything, isn't it? Quite nice.
It's interesting you say that, because I was just about to say I'm not sure why there's a whole bunch of giant pickaxes and shields floating in the sea, but yeah.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
But they have definitely themed each individual level quite nicely. So what have we got? We've got... Okay, so this blue is just ice, I guess. So this is not deadly blue, this is speedy blue.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh god, okay, so this is...
So... Ooh, I didn't even notice I got some...
I have some ramps now as well.
Alright, so let's go back a bit and let's try and line this up. Which ramp? Should we go for this ramp?
Yeah.
No, that didn't do it. Maybe middle ramp? Oh, there we go, ran out of snow. So this ice doesn't just feel slippy, it feels like it's properly accelerating me in a particular direction.
Alright.
Also, the fact that this wall keeps disappearing is a little bit unnerving. Okay, while I'm Oh no, I overshot slightly.
Are you lighter if you're smaller? So is it like better to be small when you got
maybe.
grab or something like that?
I feel like I was pretty light the first time I tried it though.
That's true.
Okay, so yeah, while I'm wrestling with this, let's try it. Hey, there we go. And I got a hat. I was so good that time. Shall we take a look at the mark scheme?
Yeah. So the first criteria is presentation, with the sub-criteria of graphics, audio, and information design.
Okay, so yeah, the initial presentation, I think it's like nicely put together. We've got some very clear, like we've got a relatively clear route, although the camera clips into some of the scenery at times, but we've got a really nice bar at the bottom. When it starts running red, the whole screen flashes. We've got the timer nice and prominent. We've got the high scores on the top right. I don't know whether they need to be on screen at all times, but I don't feel like they're interfering a huge amount with gameplay. So that's good. Every time we've got a a target or something that we have to shoot, it's very obvious that we have to shoot it. The little piles of snow are mostly it's pretty clear what's what. Like maybe the only like bit of information design that could be clearer is the difference between ice and water. Like, they are slightly different shades of blue, but not hugely different. But other than that, I think they've done pretty well here. I would say, you know, it's relatively polished and professional looking. Hold on, where am I? Oh no! Oh no! Ooh.
So we're definitely saying good. Are we gonna say maybe it's impactful, complete, effective, and appealing? I mean, you said that it's difficult sometimes to gauge between the different surface types. Yeah.
I think that's the thing. I think if we look at the criteria for it, it's definitely complete and appealing. The effectiveness is maybe hampered in a few little places, so maybe it's part way between a good and an excellent then.
Yeah, sounds good.
I think overall they've done a really good job. There's a few little bits that are like difficult to decipher, but I didn't even talk about the audio. So we've got some lovely background music as well. We've got like the little sound effect when we ready set snow, and we've got a little one when we fire our snowballs, and when we pick stuff up as well. So yeah, overall they've used audio really nicely as well. Like maybe if they'd also combined that red flashing warning of us being on low health with an audio cue, that would have been nice too. But otherwise, yeah, I think between a good and an excellent sounds pretty good. So next category is meaningful play. So
that's all to do with mechanics, controls, and whether there are any bugs or anything. So how do the controls feel? I know earlier you said it might have been a little bit hard to jump.
Gauging the jump is still a little bit odd, and I think that might just be because of the change in weight between big snowball and little snowball that affects that somehow, or possibly just how I'm expecting it to work. Certainly the ice is tricky to control. Obviously that's partly deliberate, but it feels like... I think I just lost midair there. Partly that's deliberate, partly I do think we just sort of rocket off in a particular direction at some point, which maybe is less deliberate. But other than that, I certainly haven't noticed any sort of particular bugs. Overall, it controls quite smoothly, which is what you want in this type of game, where it's all about trying to keep that sort of smooth and fluid movement. Mechanics-wise, we've got obviously the movement, the shrinking and growing of the snowball, the being able to fire fire snowball at different targets. Maybe they could have done a bit more with that, so it wasn't just a big wall that you have to shoot, but like if you could unlock a quicker path or something with it, that'd be kind of neat. Or like some other kind of obstacles rather than just a giant wall in your path that you have to fire a snowball at. But I think of the mechanics they've got, they've used them nicely in combination with one another.
Would you say that the clipping, well, we don't actually clip through the walls, but the camera clips through the walls. Would you say that was a bug, or it's probably something more like that you'd kind of address a bit later stage, I'm guessing, in like the development cycle?
I've already talked about that in the sort of presentation of it, so I'm not going to put them in double jeopardy, so to speak.
Okay.
And so I don't think it's a bug. I think it's more, like a sort of a design consideration in terms of the presentation. Oh no, there we go. Where are we? So a good would be, it's engaging gameplay. So there's multiple mechanics. The controls are smooth. There's a reasonable amount of complexity, and there's it might have some minor bugs. It feels like we're solidly there at least. For excellent, it would need to be fun, and that sort of comes down to do the mechanics complement each other? Does it have perhaps more complexity? Are the controls sort of overall nice and intuitive? And I think I feel like we're certainly getting towards there. They've certainly got like a nice mix of mechanics that they have combined in this sort of final level. I think maybe they could have done something a bit more complex with the mechanics they've got. So, like I mentioned about the... hang on. No. With the firing the snowballs and the barriers and things like that. But overall, I think this is a fun game. So, I think that probably puts us in the excellent for gameplay. Unless I don't. What do you think?
No, I think I agree. Yeah, definitely. What's it? The high complexity. No, I haven't. I haven't seen any game-breaking bugs for sure. And it feels like it's been play tested. So yeah, no, it's good. I would say it's definitely on the excellent level.
I'm curious how the author managed to do this in 56 seconds, but maybe they're just a lot better than me. Okay, so that takes us on to how well they fulfilled the brief, which was all about level design and tutorials. So, in terms of the level design, what sort of goals, risks, and rewards have they got? Well, I guess the obvious one is you need snow to stay alive, but the more snow you get, the slower you get. So it's kind of in your interest to push your luck effectively, to try and sort of maintain high speed, low drag without actually failing the level. So that's kind of a nice approach. I think possibly they could have expanded on that a bit by sort of making some of those more deliberate choices. So, for example, different paths through the level and things like that. But otherwise, that as a sort of ongoing mechanic all the way through works quite well.
Do you slow down by any chance when you hit you don't, do you?
When you hit
a pile of snow?
I mean, you slow down as you get bigger, but I don't think the snow itself sort of is like a physical barrier. Okay,
so there's a risk and reward sort of there. So, you can be small and fast, or you can play it safer and collect the snow, but you're a little bit slower.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
I'm just going to try and do this one really slowly. Oh no, mistakes were made.
Well, there we go.
We can definitely say that it is fun gameplay because I'm stopping talking about it to try and actually beat this level. Okay, so goals, risks, and rewards. We've got a pretty clear goal: get to the end of the level, get there as fast as possible, tied together nicely with the information design. That's very slippy ice. I can't get the. There we go. Again, 56 seconds, they say.
This is challenging for 56 seconds.
So yeah, goal's very clear. There's definitely sort of ongoing risk and reward. Would you say it's clear and coherent?
I think I would. Yeah, would you?
Yeah, I think there's... Oh god, I feel like I could really do with a checkpoint or something somewhere because I'm nervous now. Like the placement of the snow, do you feel like it's like in a pattern, or it's particularly, or does it feel a bit random?
I suppose it does feel a little bit random, so it doesn't.
Like it doesn't. It feels like if I get the snow, it's partly more accident than intention, because there's rare that I'll see a path and go, I'm going to need a whole bunch of snow for this. It's more just as I zip past something, do I have more than red, and if so, try and get snow. I don't want to restart I just want to restart this one. So I think I've seen all of the levels. So the marathon, yeah, certainly does what it says on the tin, and it's got it combines all of the mechanics and the aesthetics that we've seen so far as well, which is kind of nice. Let's see if I can get that top hat. Okay, so good would be clear and coherent set of goals, risks, and rewards. Excellent would be the same but well balanced, and I don't think they're poorly balanced. I think maybe they could have done more to demonstrate that balance. But I think this is solidly at least a good, perhaps even between a good and an excellent. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd say so. It would have been nice to make more of the mechanic of the throwing the snowball and make that a little bit more risky, I suppose. Because I don't see. I mean, so say like there's two different paths, and one that you can spend a snowball, but maybe get there a little bit faster, but it's a risk. But I don't see that. I only see that you have to spend the snow to get past a certain part. You can't, unless there's something I've missed in your gameplay. There doesn't seem to be an option. You have to throw the snowball. I don't know really. Oh, that's good.
So we almost skipped over this feature, but yeah, the fact that they've got unlockable cosmetics, in fact we'll probably talk about this in a second, but adding like a secondary dynamic of collection is kind of a nice touch. Oh, look at that. That looks great. Oh, interesting. I was expecting it to remain sort of jauntily perched on the top of my snowball rather than just rolling around. That's very funny to me.
Does hats get bigger as you collect more snow? I feel like it gets smaller, doesn't it? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go on. Yeah.
Cool. So the next thing would be the actual tutorial. So we've got these little signposts, and every time they teach us a new mechanic, that thing is pretty much the first thing that we see, which is always good because it means we can try it out. And the iteration cycles are pretty short, so that every time we learn something new, if we mess it up, we can try again pretty easily. And it's only in the final level that they're all brought together in the absolute marathon of a level. Okay, so... Oh, hang on, no, I've skipped over something, haven't I? I've skipped over pacing, so let's talk about pacing first. So, overall, does the tension rise over time?
I would say it definitely does. Definitely with this level, when we're introduced to water, that obviously makes it obviously like a skill. Oh wow, you bounced quite high.
You see what I mean about the jumping feeling a bit weird?
Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely the levels certainly get a lot more mechanically challenging. That's partly just because they get a lot longer. So they don't necessarily combine. So the last level contains all of the mechanics, doesn't necessarily combine all of the mechanics, is what I will say. But overall, yeah, the tension definitely rises. It's in a relatively coherent pattern. Like we were saying before, could it be balanced better? Possibly a little, but it's certainly not poorly balanced. So again, that feels like it's sort of between a good and an excellent to me. Okay, and then yeah, back to tutorial design. So we've got a gradual explanation of gameplay and controls. It's fully aligned with play. They don't sort of feel the need to take us out of it to give us a whole bunch of dialogue boxes. There's just a nice diegetic sign telling us the controls and letting us try it out in practice, and then drawing it together at the end. So where are we? Is it communicated through the level design? Yeah, it certainly is at parts. Because we've got the initial tutorial of jumping there, and then immediately an obstacle that we have to jump over. And again, I think we come back to the point of there's no real tutorial beyond that, and there's no real tutorial needed beyond that, because there's no more complexity to the mechanics they've got. Like there's never, for example, a spot where I have to jump and then fire a snowball to do something that they could have then sort of tutorialized through the setup of their level. It's just, here's how you jump, here's a gap to jump over, now here's a bunch more gaps. So there's definitely room for expansion, but what they've got I think is still very, very good. So I think in fact that would probably hit an excellent what I've just described. Okie doke. And core dynamic. So what would you say is the core dynamic of this game?
I would say it was race to the end.
Would you? And what did they say in the game notes that we asked them to hand in?
They also said it was race to the end.
Good. I think they're probably right.
Yeah. So a clear core dynamic that is supported by the primary mechanics would be a good.
So yeah,
yeah,
certainly
we have
the primary mechanic is moving the snowball and the big clock on the screen. So I think they definitely support the race to the end. Run out of snow. Okay.
Jumping as well, also jumping over obstacles. Also a mechanic that helps you get to the end. So I would say we're definitely at a good level. Excellent level would be a clear core dynamic that is supported by an integrated set of mechanics. I suppose this is what you were saying earlier, that the mechanics, there's no time where we use the mechanics together.
Yeah.
So
certainly the marathon course has all of them within it, and there are sort of parts where it's combined, like, you know, you're jumping over the slidey ice or the water or whatever, but it feels more like just they've stitched the previous set of levels together rather than come up with like a new mechanic out of the existing mechanics. That said, so I already previously mentioned they've almost got this supporting dynamic of collectibles to encourage people to go back and try and beat the best times, which I think is a nice touch. So although they don't have the integrated set of mechanics, they almost hit something in the prizeworthy category and sort of skipped over the excellent. So it feels like what we do there is we put them halfway between the two and put them on an excellent for that. Okay, and last but by no means least is feedback. So during the development, we gave all the students some feedback on their design and asked them to interpret and incorporate that going forwards. So what feedback do they talk about in their game notes?
They've got a lot of information there in their notes. I'll let you play a little longer.
I was going to say you skim it and then give us the interesting bits.
So there was a first bit of feedback to strengthen their core dynamic. So let's read this a little bit.
So from the sounds of it, they previously had collectible hats all the way through their levels, and instead they decided to make those an extra reward for if you managed to beat the particular time. And yeah, I think that really does strengthen that core dynamic, because again, it gives that collection aspect, but as a way of supporting Race to the End rather than a competing dynamic in its own right. So I think that works really, really well. What else have they got? So they removed some detracting features. They added some to try and emphasize the Race to the End, including times to beat. So a couple of although I said, you know, having that leaderboard in the top right at all times, and it's not super distracting. I guess it is a bit motivating because you can constantly see what the best times are compared to your time. So yeah, I think that's probably a relatively successful change as well. And of the other bits of feedback, one of the things they mention is reducing the amount of sort of explicit tutorial elements like signs and trying to do more of it through the level design. So they never directly signpost that, hey, ice is slippy. They just put a big patch of ice in front of you and let you slide across. So So I mean, yeah, again, that's something that we sort of covered when talking about the tutorial elements. The same way that they don't necessarily say water is bad, they just put some water in front of you and let you discover that for yourself. So that bit, that again, I think has worked out quite well for them. Okay, so I would say, so the feedback has definitely been addressed. Changes have definitely been successful. I would even say they've put some amount of interpretation onto it, particularly with that first bit of using the hats as a reward for beating times rather than collectibles within the level. So I think they've probably hit an excellent for that as well.
Like your hat now on the side of your snowball.
I do like the hat. So yeah, overall, like this is a really nice game. Their dynamic is really clear throughout, and yeah, I've been having fun trying to beat the best times. Although I don't think I'm ever going to beat this level in under 56 seconds. Okay, let's move on to the next game.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is Cosmic Conquest. So again, nice little title screen, some lovely background music, very ethereal, very cosmic. And we've even got an options screen so we can tweak the music and sound effects. Because it started off real loud, but nice that they've added that as a quality of life feature. So let's hit play. Let's jump straight into it. So I guess this is a level select screen as well. So let's click on the planet labeled Tutorial Planet. Okay, tap WASD to move your ship to the green highlighted tile. Okay, so I guess that's our ship. And there we've got our movement controls. So it's grid-based movement, and if we move to the green, this is a basic enemy, and how they shoot. So we've taken damage, we're pushed back on the grid, try shooting at the enemy with spacebar. Okay, they've taken some damage, I guess we try shooting at them some more. When we kill the enemy, the grid moves forward. So our goal is to push the enemies all the way back, now try and kill a moving enemy. Okay, so some element of almost prediction here, trying to guess where they're going to go next. Let's try a wave of enemies, so now we've got more space to move around. Ooh, they started quite close, that seems a little bit new. And as soon as we take a hit, we lose a bit of our space to maneuver, which makes it quite challenging. So if they've come... That's interesting. So the closer the enemies come to us, the less time we have to think, and the more damage we take, the further we get pushed back, and the more likely it is that we have even less time to think and react. Which feels maybe a little bit punishing. Let's try another way. Beware of the cannon enemy and don't stay on the tiles they're targeting. Ooh, okay, I was going to say how do we know which tiles they're targeting, but I guess that covers that. So you see, as we start winning and we get more space to maneuver, we can actually force them to give us more reaction time by just sitting at the back here. Get to the end of the level, okay. So these things take, is it 2 or 3 hits?
I think it's 2. It's like 2.
Ah, yes it is.
It feels like 3 from their bar though, doesn't it?
It does. Oh, and they can sit on the same tile as well. So it definitely feels like... let's see how things evolve, but it definitely feels like, you know, once you start winning, it's much easier to keep winning. So there's... Yeah, the balance and pacing, I'm not sure. We'll see how things develop. Let's go to the level select screen. Ah, okay, so I guess they've only got the tutorial level, but it's a relatively complete tutorial level, so let's dive back into it, and I guess start going through the marks criteria then.
Yeah. So first is presentation, graphics, audio and information design. From the audio, it sounds like it's very relevant to space and the universe, all that sort of stuff. So I'm guessing it's quite relevant.
Yeah, we've got lovely sort of cosmic-y background music. We've got some lovely sound effects as well. Lots of good old classic sort of 8-bit pew pews as we blast enemies.
Yeah.
pretty good. It's very clear the spaces that we can move into. It's very clear what those cannon enemies are targeting. There's even a nice little explosion effect when they fire. That's all pretty nice. We've got the health bars of the enemy. Yeah, I think it probably is 50%. It just looks like it's not.
So we're probably... Well, we're definitely sort of like the satisfactory level. We're definitely like workable.
Oh yeah, easily. In terms of information design, do you think there's anything that they're maybe missing?
I suppose the number of enemies hit would be quite nice. I don't know. That doesn't really make a huge difference to the gameplay.
Yeah, I think if they were going to expand this beyond the tutorial level, so if they were going to have like another level after this, letting us know how many enemies were left in the wake would be kind of good. But other than that, I think they're solidly up at the good level for this. Possibly even partway to excellent. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd say so. Impactful, complete, effective, and appealing. I would say that they were, yeah, definitely those things.
Okay, so let's move on to the mechanics and the meaningful play. So, what are the mechanics like? What are the controls like? So we've got moving and shooting. We've got the enemies moving and shooting back. We've got the I guess their sort of novel, unique selling point is the sort of health bar also restricting your movement, which is kind of interesting. And we've got two different types of enemies as well, which is kind of neat. So they've definitely got a set of controls, a set of mechanics rather, and the controls are simple but effective. And I haven't noticed any particular bugs, so I think we're up at what would a good would be engaging gameplay, so multiple mechanics, smooth controls, and reasonable complexity. I feel like we're maybe between a satisfactory and a good here. I think there's definitely a lot of scope for them to use the existing mechanics they've got to sort of maybe combine a few more levels or introduce maybe a few different enemy types or even power-ups for the player. But the mechanics that they've got and the controls that they've got are definitely smooth and workable. I think they maybe could just do with a few extra ones to add some additional complexity.
So that brings us on to level design. So goals, risks, and rewards.
So this doesn't just level design in this case doesn't just encompass like the physical layout of the level, but the order in which they introduce enemies and the types of enemies they introduce and the types of ways the enemies sort of behave towards the player and things like that. So we've got so for example here we're introduced to a new type of enemy that can assert different control over the grid we've got. But overall, in terms of risk versus reward, it feels like there's definitely a bit of a dominant strategy here, which is to just sort of stay at the back and hold the spacebar down and just keep moving. There's not a huge amount of risk versus reward that I can see, and in fact, to a degree, there's this problem of balance with, once you start winning, it's much easier to continue winning, and you get sort of disproportionately punished if you take a few hits early on.
Would have been quite nice, I suppose, to see something like it when you do expand your kind of like your blue area, if there's maybe like a powerful beam weapon or something later on that you can grab that's close to them, and that would be an example, I suppose, of a risk that you can take, but you have
absolutely. So
greater reward sort of thing.
So that's a perfect example of putting up the most powerful power up closer to the enemy side to encourage you to sort of get up close and personal to them, so that there's that risk versus reward. So unfortunately currently it feels like we've got a pretty limited set of risks and rewards. I mean, our goal at least is very clear. It's kill all of the bad alien spaceships. That's a solid goal. But the risk versus reward is a little bit lacking, unfortunately, here. I think there is definitely a dominant strategy for now, which is sit at the back and hold down spacebar. So that, at the minute, puts them... would we say it's a limited set or a very limited set?
I would say, I don't know. I'd say a limited set for sure. I wouldn't say it was incoherent.
It's definitely not coherent. There's definitely risks and there's definitely goals, but there's no real payoff for those risks. So I think we're definitely at a limited set. We may even be at a very limited set, possibly partway between the two, which would put them somewhere between a pour and a pass for that element.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm curious to see what happens when we actually lose. Okay, so we get a nice little audio cue and some more explosions. That's kind of nice. So pacing-wise, I think we're going to run into a similar problem here of that kind of dominant strategy and that kind of runaway snowball effect, both for winning or losing. So, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. So the pacing definitely increases because they start introducing multiple enemies at once. They start introducing new and more dangerous types of enemies. So they have that going for them. So we've got tensions rising over time, but I think it's difficult to say that they clearly rise over time because of this dominant strategy that exists. There's not a huge difference to me between, there being 6 enemies on the screen versus 1 enemy on the screen, because I'm just sitting back here and just holding down spacebar, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Which I think puts them pretty much at a pass, unfortunately, for that. Tutorial-wise, so how well have they tutorialized the various mechanics that they've got?
There's some text on screen, which is handy, and then you actually you do those things, and there's a reaction within the environment. So they have tutorialized it to some extent.
Yeah, and in fact, you may not be able to tell this, but that first enemy that hits us, that we take damage, they actually take away our controls for a little bit to force us to take damage, so that they can show what happens when that's the case.
Oh, right.
I think maybe this bit of text, this tutorial text, is maybe a bit obsolete. If you're putting a bunch of exclamation marks all over the play area, hopefully that you don't need text to tutorialize that specifically. That's something that the player should be able to get, and that would be a nice example of you just introducing a new enemy with a new ability and using the level design of the space actually convey some of that information. So I don't think the text is hugely detrimental to it, but it's maybe not 100% necessary. Although this, is kind of nice. They highlight a particular section of the grid for you to move towards, and they do only move forwards in the tutorial once you complete every step of it. So the tutorial won't get away from you if it takes you a little while to defeat that one enemy.
Well, another thing as well is as the tutorial progresses, it's very time dependent. Obviously, you have to watch out where the enemies are moving, and reading a sentence when that's happening, like at this stage, might get a little bit, a little bit harder.
Yeah,
lots of things happening on screen.
So we've definitely got a gradual explanation of gameplay and controls, because they gradually introduce new elements as we get later on. I'd say it's definitely somewhat aligned with play, because they encourage us to play with it, test out that mechanic before moving on to the next one. It's not just a big text dump telling us what to do. What else have we got? Is it fully aligned with play? It's close to being it. I think, again, they're maybe relying on text a bit too much, rather than relying on the player to sort of learn some of the mechanics through being exposed to them. And that's partly also the player has a limited number of mechanics at their disposal to try out. So a lot of the things they're being tutorialized are things that happen to them that they don't actually get to try out and experience themselves. So I would say... Go ahead.
Oh, so probably somewhere between a satisfactory and a good, then maybe?
Yeah, I think so. Okie doke, which takes us on to the core dynamic. So what would you say is the core dynamic of this game?
Survival, would you say?
I don't know. So there's definitely a way to win it. So it's not like survive as long as possible. There's definitely an end state that we're striving towards. So what have they said that it is in their game notes?
They said the territory acquisition.
And I can see why they've said that. Like, we're obviously acquiring more territory as we progress. It's maybe slightly disconnected from the. Well, it's not like we're having to hold a particular bit of territory to capture it. We just shoot something and then the line arbitrarily moves forwards. But you could say that's a bit like a front line in a war game, right? You defeat enough enemy, the line moves forwards, and once the line has moved all the way to the end, you win. So it doesn't necessarily hit all the elements of what you'd consider like a traditional territory acquisition game, where you're capturing particular locations for a particular reason, and maybe they give you some extra benefit to having them, so that you can then capture more territory. But I can see why they've said that, and I think the mechanics that they've got do probably lend itself towards that. However, I think again the sort of like lack of like major mechanics that the player has access to means that it feels like it's almost a little bit confused with a destruction dynamic, because what the player is primarily engaged with is destroying enemies. They're destroying the enemies and the line goes forwards, but they're not actively trying to like make the line go forwards. They're actively trying to kill the bad guys before they get killed.
Yeah.
So, and that's not to say that any game that has shooting enemies is automatically a destruction game, but that's the primary element that the player has control over in this game.
There is no way to be passive, is there, and say, okay, well, I'm not going to destroy any enemies, I'm just going to capture, I'm just going to make my blue line go forward.
But okay, so I think so we've got a clear core dynamic, and I would say it's partially supported. I'd even say mostly supported by the primary mechanics, which I think would put them between a satisfactory and a good for this. And lastly, but by no means leastly, is feedback. So what did they mention? What did they mention that was the feedback that they got for this game, and how have they tried to interpret that?
So interestingly, they said that they got feedback relating to their core dynamic, actually. So they tried to gear the game's mechanics to fit the core dynamic of territory acquisition, focusing on rewarding good play by visually displaying the player's success on the screen and the territory to move around in. Okay, actually, yeah, they have a point there. So there is, like, as you capture territory, it allows you to move more freely. I think I've already said that that's maybe, in a way, sort of detrimental to some of the other aspects of their game, because having now constrained this... I was going to say it doesn't actually matter for this particular enemy, but yeah, it maybe throws off the balance a little, but you're right, they have taken some steps to really emphasize that it's territorial acquisition by nicely color coding the territory that we've got and making it very obvious that that is the ultimate goal of the game, is to move the line forwards. I think, as I sort of already said when I was talking about the core dynamic, they maybe could have done more with that. So if they had particular areas to focus on, conquering or taking over, that maybe sort of highlight or emphasize different particular bits of that dynamic. Okay, anything else that they sort of mentioned in terms of their feedback? Interestingly, I know you said at the start, when you said there was like a negative loop, if you died too much at the start, then it makes the game harder and harder. And it's interesting that one of their points was to implement ways to prevent negative feedback loops. I
think that's because I remember giving that as feedback at the time. So what exactly have they done to try and mitigate that? Because from playing it, it still seems like that problem is there to me.
Right, so they've implemented invincibility frames for the player. So it looks like if you take multiple sources of damage in a short time, you're not punished for all of that damage. Although you seem to be taking every time.
it's certainly... Okay, so maybe that's a flaw with the information design. I can't see how long that invisibility... So normally, if you've got iframes after a player takes damage, you flash the sprite or something to make it really clear that, okay, now you've got this moment of invulnerability, so that it's really clear when that wears off. I think definitely if you had 2 overlapped enemies and they fired 2 shots on you, having that little window of invulnerability definitely mitigates the problem a bit, so you don't instantly get slammed back like 3 grid squares. But it doesn't solve the overall problem of the more you're losing, the less reaction time you have.
So, and then the final bit of feedback was tutorialize the game's controls and systems to the player. And yeah, one of them was that they slowly introduced the game mechanics in order. And yeah, one of them was what you pointed out at the start, which was they kind of like lock you in place in that kind of green square in the first bit of the tutorial, to kind of say like, when you take damage, this happens. So yeah, that was one thing that they implemented. So I suppose a good addition in the tutorial kind of front.
Yeah, okay.
Potentially the negative feedback loop wasn't not addressed very well, potentially.
I think they definitely included something in an attempt to address it, but it didn't necessarily solve the whole problem. So I think they've made some changes that have certainly served the game well, like the sort of gradual tutorial, and some that maybe haven't had quite the impact that they were hoping for. So I would say... So they've made some changes, and they've been somewhat successful overall.
Yes.
Okie doke. Let's move on to our next game. Alright, and our last game of this batch is Penguin Panic. So it feels like we've got a very, very Christmassy lineup this time round. 2 sort of snowy themed games. So, as before, lovely little title screen, lovely little characters, some lovely little cheerful music in the background. And we've got an explicit tutorial level. I'm actually just going to drop the sound just a little bit so you can hear my co-presenter talking in the background. Cool. So something I noticed when playing this game before is, we could jump into the tutorial, but nah, we're too good for tutorials. We're going to skip it. We're going to hit play. But hey, they give us a little bit of a dynamic prompt saying, hey, we notice you've not played the tutorial yet. Do you want to play it now first? So, a nice little hint or a prompt that perhaps you should go through the tutorial. So, okay, let's say yes, and we will go through it. So there's our little penguin. That's a really nice little snow effect. WSD to move. Ooh, speedy penguin. Move around to roll up snow. Click on this enemy to shoot it with your snowball. Bonk. Pick up the coins to get stronger. Bigger snowball means bigger damage. It also makes you slower. Shoot to regain your movement. Finish off this enemy. Avoid enemy attacks and defeat them.
Oh, that's great.
I assume they're carrots.
Carrots. Yeah.
See how high a level you can reach. Good luck. Okie doke. So this is the game proper, I guess. So, pow. Oh, so once you get to 4 times snowball, you can't move, but you can take out multiple snowmen with 1. Ooh, interesting. Level up. Oh. So we've got 3 coins, we get to level up. If we pick speed, we can increase the movement speed. If we pick strength, we increase the maximum damage from 4 to... Does that also mean we can move for longer while we're rolling snow? And stamina, decrease the slowdown from rolling up a big snowball. I'm going to go for stamina. Yeah, the fact that you suddenly stop moving when you've hit a... leveled up again. I'm going to go for more stamina. Is a little bit jarring, but it's kind of an interesting mechanic. Ooh, that looks like a... Ooh, heck, they move now.
Oh.
I lost a life, yeah, but I also got a coin, so let's go for more stamina, I think. So I'm curious if there is like a dominant strategy in just always just immediately firing 1-star snowballs at things. Ooh, and the coins disappear. And okay, so this is something I was curious about. It's every time we pick up 3 coins, we get this pause and we level up. And this is beginning to feel a little bit jarring and a little bit like it breaks the flow just a little bit. So I like that they've got an upgrade system, but the fact that it's every 3 coins it pauses the game even though I'm just about to be tackled by a giant snowman is a little bit, like, it breaks the flow just a little bit, unfortunately. So I don't know how. So for example, maybe if you leveled up every, I don't know, every 10 coins or something like that, or even just every minute you got to spend all of the coins you'd collected rather than just every 3 it pausing the game. I've already lost my train of thought because I'm thinking too much about penguins. So I like that the bigger, more challenging snowmen drop more coins and drop a heart as well. That's kind of a nice reward for the bigger challenge. So I think
I've got a nice bit of information design for the snowball rolling in the bottom left-hand corner. That's quite nice.
Yeah, and the snowmen overall, so they each have like a health that's measured in the amount of snowballs they can take. I am curious if there's like a dominant strategy in just constantly chucking snowballs and staying very, very speedy, or trying to get the biggest snowball you can. In a way, so we'll probably talk about this in just a second, that feels like kind of a nice bit of almost like choice in the gameplay. Like if one of those isn't obviously stronger than the other, perhaps it's a viable sort of like player choice. You can choose how you want to most play the game. So I'm going to try and hang on to my giant snowballs this time and see if that works better for me. This is still jarring a little bit, but I'll try not to harp on it too much. But yes, let's start taking a look through the mark scheme.
So we've got the first criteria is quality or presentation, and we're looking at the graphics, audio, and information design. So.
Sorry, I am going to harp on it just a little bit more. The fact that the big guy drops 4 coins means that in picking up those 4 coins, I might level up twice, so I immediately get 2 pause pop-ups. But yes, let me say nice things for a little bit, so I don't overly criticize this. The presentation is absolutely lovely. The audio, the little graphics, they all tie together so nicely. Is there any bits of information design we're missing?
I would say probably it got me a while to think about that, actually. That the bottom left-hand score, the bottom left-hand thing is not a score multiplier. For some reason, I had it in my head that 3 times 4 times was like a number of coins or something, or points that we were accruing.
Yeah, it's possibly a little less clear. I assume it's the snowball damage, and I'll be honest, I'm super not looking at that bottom left-hand corner. So there is some indication of how powerful the snowball is just based on its size, but maybe in the same way that they've put numbers on the snowmen, maybe putting that number on the snowballs that you're creating as well, maybe would have like made that a little bit more easier to see at a glance. We've also in the top right got our current level. I don't know what the current level represents, because it's not like the power-ups get more expensive as we go. So is the time our score, or is our level our score? I feel like the time is most important, because that's in the middle of the screen. In which case, what does the level actually do for us? Are things getting harder because we're level 13? If that's the case, should I be trying to avoid picking up coins? Okay, so a few minor sort of gripes around the information design, but otherwise, the visuals are great, the audio is great. I really like the effect they've put on the audio when this is what I get for trying to talk while dodging snowmen. When they have the little store pop up, you get a the audio is like muted or muffled because it's behind the pop up. I think that's a really nice touch. So I feel like we're probably at the excellent level for presentation. I don't know if we're quite up to prizeworthy, but yeah, I quite like this.
Okay.
Next is gameplay, or meaningful play, I should say. Yeah, it's certainly fun. It's certainly I'm definitely having fun playing it. So what have we? We've got a number of different mechanics. We've got moving, we've got shooting, we've got the dropping of coins, we've got the different types of enemies, we've got the I would even say like the slightly novel mechanic of, you know, powering up your shot and then sort of getting to a certain point where you're stuck. So it's not the only game to do that ever, but it's the fact that you're constantly gathering snow and then have to make the choice to sort of stay still or fire it. Oh no, I feel like I'm about to lose a high score. Is kind of interesting. The controls definitely work well together. It's maybe a little bit hit and miss whether... actually, hang on, let me go back to the information design just for a second, because this sort of ties into it. The hitboxes of me and the snowmen are maybe a little bit unclear. It would be nice if, particularly, you know, the big snowmen that have got much more health, the number ticks down if I hit them, but it'd be great if they, you know, flashed red or something to show that I actually definitely aimed the snowball right. Yep. But otherwise, yeah, sort of where are we at?
So definitely playable. So it's like fewer mechanics, usable controls, may have some minor bugs, but we've got a lot of... I feel like we've got a decent set of mechanics, would you say?
Yeah, I think if they didn't have this power-up system, I would actually be leaning towards saying there's relatively few mechanics here, but because you've got some amount of like choice over which stats you level up and things like that, that probably gives them enough for a relatively complete set of mechanics. I think there's still probably scope for them to add, you know, newer types of enemies later on, or even newer abilities for your penguin as you level up and things like that. But the fact that we've got collecting coins, storing coins, the ability to effectively spend them in a store, all tie together quite nicely.
So are we at would you say we're at like a good level? Like multiple mechanics, smooth controls, reasonable complexity? Or do you think we're sort of somewhere in between the two?
I think we're at least at a good. Do we think it's intuitive? I would say we're actually between a good and an excellent.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to take an opportunity the next time I level up to glance at my mark scheme that I've got on the side. Yeah, so I mean, I definitely described it as fun, so it's definitely getting towards the excellent. I think maybe they could have, you know, had slightly more complexity in terms of different types of enemies and things like that. But there's the enemies that chase you around. There's enemies that fire, you know, carrots at you. I think it's, you know what? I would almost say it probably does hit the excellent, unless you think halfway between the two is more representative.
Have we found any bugs or anything yet? I don't think we have actually, have we?
I certainly haven't seen any bugs.
So definitely being play tested probably. So I would say, yeah, probably an excellent then.
Okie doke. So moving on to how well it met the brief, and to start that, the level design.
So yes, goals, risks, and wars. So we've got a clear risk, which is good. Like we can charge up our shot, but we are slower if we charge up our shot. So like you say, have you found there's a sort of dominant strategy, or are you doing a little bit of mixture of both, of firing small shots and large shots?
That's a great question. I don't know if I'm consciously doing it, but I am definitely trying to mix up my strategy a little bit. I think there's the moment-to-moment risk versus reward, which is the do you try and charge the snowball up a little bit more for damage at the risk of getting shot by a carrot? But you've also got these, how do I want to level up my character? Individually, I don't know how much any of these things are making a difference, but it definitely does seem to have an impact, cumulatively over several levels. So the goal is, yep, there we go. I've definitely got a much larger snowball now. It feels a bit of a waste to throw it at that one guy, but there we are.
There we go.
Getting too distracted. I totally lost track of where we were. Goals, risk, and reward. So,
yeah.
Clear set of goals. Well, we'll come back to this when we talk about the core dynamic, but I am curious as to, is the goal kill more snowmen, or is the goal survive for as long as possible? Now, in this particular game, those are going to be pretty closely linked, I think.
Mm.
But this goes back to what I was saying about, is the clock at the top what we're measuring our score by, or is our level what we're measuring our score by? So, I think ultimately, for the goals, risk, and reward, they're close enough that the goal itself is clear, even if those two goals are very closely linked.
Mm.
I almost don't want to level up my speed because I'm worried that that's going to make me move too fast to properly control. But let's see what happens. And then when we've got risk versus reward, yeah, we've got a couple of different elements of risk versus reward. We've got the moment-to-moment of moving the snowball, and when we decide to fire it, and we've got the type of thing that we level up. So I think they've actually done relatively well on the risk versus reward set. Yeah, definitely clear and coherent. I'm trying to decide what I was going to say. Do we think they're well balanced? I think they probably are. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see anything particularly game breaking about one or the other sort of thing. I mean, I think you are kind of stressed in the fact that you need to move around for sure, and sacrificing your speed is definite risk. But you feel better kind of like when you have fired the snowball, you can like get away from those big enemies a bit better. So I'd probably say they were.
Yeah, I think that's probably
and well balanced.
That's sort of the excellent level. Okay.
Yeah.
What are we at next? Next is pacing. So things definitely heat up as we, I don't know if heat up is the right word for a penguin in a snowstorm, but there's definitely more enemies that was terrible, I know. As we go on, there's definitely more enemies. I haven't really been... It doesn't feel like the numbers on the enemies ramp up to a massive degree. Like, they definitely get bigger. I feel like I would be expecting to see more of the big chonky snowmen. There we go, there's one.
There more snowmen in general. I think in later levels I've seen a lot more spawning.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. There we go. So I think obviously there's definitely rising tension. It's sort of balanced a little by the fact that, as we encounter more snowmen, we probably collected more coins. Which maybe puts us on a more even footing when there are harder snowmen. So yeah, I guess most of these ones that are spawning now are all level 2. So yeah, there is definitely a balance curve there. There we go, we've got a couple of level 1 ones. I wonder if that's because they spawned at the same time as the big fella. Whoop.
So we've got. So it's definitely rises over time in a coherent, and is it a well balanced pattern? That's what I suppose. So a good would be tension rises over time in a coherent pattern. I would probably say it was coherent. So
yes, I think
Probably in between the two.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think it feels like they could have actually ramped things up a little bit more. I mean, we're getting more like 3-star snowmen now. And I know I'm not, amazing at this game, but it definitely feels like they could have ramped up the challenge a little bit more. Like, it'd be interesting to see, what happens if there's two of the big snowmen at once. Maybe that would be a little bit overkill. There we go. We get a nice little moment of invulnerability as well. Let me get that heart. Yeah. I think that's probably a good thing to land on. Yeah, leveling up the speed doesn't seem to be doing a lot for me, or rather, I seem to be alright neglecting speed in favour of strength and stamina, but maybe next time I'll try one over the other to see if that has an impact. Okay, so certainly the bullet hell aspect is getting a lot more challenging as more stuff starts spawning, so yeah, I think... There we go. I'm going to take my eye off the game for a second. Blah, 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 blah. Tension rises over time in a coherent and well-balanced pattern. The more I play this, the more inclined I am to say, pacing-wise, they're probably an excellent. I don't think they hit the prize-worthy because I don't think they have enough variation in the gameplay to sort of really mix things up. So, again, sort of like different, more different types of snowmen to have to interact with, But in terms of just the way they've balanced the numbers of things appearing and the level that it spawns at, I think they've done a good job there. Tutorial-wise, let's sacrifice this run and let's go back to the tutorial. So we've got an initial WSD to move, we've got the moving around and getting snow, and then once we've got so much snow we can't move anymore, we're introduced to a snowman and some coins. And then they hammer home that the important fact of, firstly, once we get to a certain snowball size we can't move, and also that some snowmen are going to take more hits, and the amount of damage they take is, correlates with the size of our snowball. See how higher level... so our goal is level, not time, according to that tutorial.
Okay.
So, in which case... Is the timer totally superfluous if it's not what we're aiming for? Let's try going full speed this time. But in terms of the tutorial, going back to that before I get distracted again, yeah, the fact that they've got a sort of a semi-sandboxed area is kind of nice because it means if you're an experienced player, you can just jump straight into the game. And if you're new, you've got some amount of time to try out your various skills without having to fret about beating any high scores or anything immediately. So we've got a... what would a good be for tutorial run?
So it would be gradual explanation of gameplay and controls fully aligned with play. I would say we're probably about there. At the excellent level, the gradual explanation of gameplay and controls fully aligned with play, sometimes communicated through level design.
So there's maybe a few elements. So like the fact that the big snowmen move around and chase you around isn't mentioned in the tutorial. That's sort of done purely through you being exposed to them over the course of the game. The same with the snowmen firing carrots at you. Like, you're never explicitly told carrots bad, don't hit carrots. But yeah, beyond that, there's not a... Most of it isn't done through the level design, most of it is done through those text prompts. So I think probably I feel like we're at a good for this. Okie doke. So next would be the core dynamic overall. So I already sort of touched on this briefly, and I think there's two answers that are likely here, but what have they said is the core dynamic?
So they've said destruction.
Okie doke. So that's sort of what I thought, and that's because they put the emphasis on collect coins, level up, rather than how long can you survive. So it's a bit weird that they've got this big clock in the screen if that's not what they're trying to emphasize. If they're trying to emphasize how many snowmen can you kill, why not have a counter of here saying, number of snowmen killed or something like that? So, okay, but setting that aside, like, it definitely feels like there was definitely a reason why I thought it wasn't definitely survival, but there was enough sort of other mechanics that were definitely pulling it towards destruction. So we're constantly told to destroy the snowmen. Most of our abilities revolve around, how, like, being able to kill the snowmen, and as we level up, we increase in power that lets us kill more snowmen. I'll be honest, I haven't noticed a huge difference in leveling up speed and nothing else compared to my other playthrough. That might be about to bite me though. So, there we go. Now I can look at the mark scheme again. So satisfactory would be a clear core dynamic partially supported by the primary mechanic. Good would be just supported by the primary mechanic. Definitely feels like we're at a good. I'm not sure it quite reaches the excellent because there isn't again that integrated connected set of mechanics that you can combine in interesting ways to evoke that dynamic, and also again, like, some of the information design sort of draws it away from or de-emphasizes that dynamic just a little bit. But broadly speaking, yeah, like the mechanics that they've got and that they make use of very much support the destruction mechanic as well.
Okay, so on to feedback. So they received 2 bits of feedback in the labs, and one of them saying that the game's core dynamic wasn't clear enough. It's interesting. So they added coins that dropped to incentivize destroying enemies as opposed to just surviving. So and those coins feed into the level up system. So then it looks like the whole level up system was something created as a response to feedback, which is interesting.
So that's one of the reasons why I had a sneaking suspicion they were going for destruction rather than survival, because I vaguely remember giving them this feedback in one of our lab sessions, where I think in like one of the early iterations of the game, coins just sort of appeared and you could run around and collect them, and you were sort of scored based on, I can't remember if it was coins collected or the time you survived, but it was definitely pulling in multiple directions. So even though I think there's still some more they could emphasize, more they could do to emphasize the destruction over the survival, that as a change has made like a dramatic impact. The fact that now like the goal is to level up, and the way I level up is by destroying snowmen or collecting the coins that I have to get from destroying snowmen, that massively tips the scales in their favor, I think.
Yeah. So the second bit of feedback they got was the game's difficulty ramps up too fast.
Interesting, okay.
So we added a powering up system so the player can survive longer by having a greater chance at fighting back. Okay, so they basically they gave the player more time so they could level up their skills, I suppose. So potentially maybe they had sort of like a 10 coin, it's a 10 coin system maybe for a level up, but maybe they reduced it to 4. I'm guessing anyway, so that you have actual, you've got some more power to defeat like the later enemies.
Okay, so
and they also got a slower start to the game as well. Yeah.
Okay, so I think overall we said their difficulty curve was like pretty good in like all things considered. So if that's partly down to the fact that they've incorporated these power elements, then that's been a really successful change. I still think the decision to pause the game every 3 coins you collect, maybe not the best one, maybe not had fully the intended outcome they were hoping for. But, but in terms of purely like the overall like balance and difficulty curve, I think it has done a good job. So I think I've increased my maximum damage to like 16 now, and I don't think I can actually physically move a snowball that does that much damage. So I think I might actually have to stop putting points into strength and put them into stamina. I'll kill this big big chap, and then we'll see what's the biggest snowball I can make. Okay, so overall, mostly I think they've handled the feedback very well, and I think they've the changes that they've made have had a broadly and in fact quite large positive impact on their game overall. I think again I'm still going to gripe a little bit about the way they've implemented that power-up system, but because it does break the flow just a little bit, and particularly if you're seconds away from dodging an incoming carrot, you don't want to have to pause it and reassess. But otherwise, yeah, I think certainly the change that they made to some of their underlying mechanics to try and emphasize destruction definitely worked well. I think again there's still stuff they could have maybe done to emphasize it more, but the changes that they've made have definitely been successful. So where does that put them?
So I suppose they're at an excellent level. They've been interpreted, addressed, and the changes have been successful.
Okie doke.
Yeah.
Oh no. Okay, which brings us to the end of this game, and actually brings us to the end of this batch as well. So I will wrap up here. But yeah, a nice set of games for this batch. Really good to see them all again, and hopefully you will join us again for another video very, very soon. See you then.